Okay, good morning, everybody. Buenos días a todos y a todas. It is an honor to welcome you to the workshop promoting European joint nominations to the UNESCO Memory of the World International Register. And to formally open this event, I would like to introduce our distinguished panel of authorities. First of all, the first speaker will be Santiago Sierra, Secretary General of the Spanish National Commission for Cooperation with UNESCO from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. After Mr. Cristian Anita, President of EURBICA and also National Archivist of Romania. We will continue with Yoon Min-Jung Cho, Secretary General of the ICDH from Korea. And finally, it will finish these opening remarks, Ana Lopez, Subdirector General of the Spanish State Archives. So please, Santiago, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It is an honor for me, as Secretary General of the Spanish National Commission for Cooperation with UNESCO, to welcome you to this technical workshop dedicated to a fundamental asset of our organization, the Memory of the World Programme. I would like to begin by greeting the President of the ICDH of Korea and the President of EURBICA, Mr. Anita. My most sincere thanks go to the Deputy Directorate General of State Archives of the Ministry of Culture. Its leadership as Vice President of EURBICA has been the driving force behind this meeting. Technical collaboration with organizations such as the ICDH is the best guarantee for the preservation of our heritage. In fact, this framework of excellence brings us to the UNESCO JIKJ Memory of the World Prize, which, thanks to the commitment of the Republic of Korea, remains the greatest international incentive for institutions that protect documentary heritage. Although it is an award that has yet to receive a Spanish nomination, its spirit of preservation inspires every step we take in our archives. The Memory of the World Register is a map of human identity. Spain, with 17 inscriptions, has successfully showcased its heritage within the program. We find milestones that define who we are today, from the Decreta of León in 1188, the origin of the European parliaments, to the Beatus of Liébana, pinnacles of our medieval miniature art. But our memory also embraces progress and diversity. We have the Santiago Ramón y Cajal archive in the scientific domain, and a key element of our global identity, the vocabularies of indigenous languages of the New World translated into Spanish. Although this inscription dates back to 2015, it takes on special significance today. In the midst of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, this legacy reminds us that the protection of linguistic diversity is not merely a historical task, but a present-day commitment to cultural rights and mutual understanding promoted by UNESCO. This commitment has recently experienced a particularly brilliant phase. In 2023, we inscribed the first circumnavigation by Magellan and Elcano, a symbol of the first wave of globalization. This commitment to global service is also reflected in the Balmis expedition, also known as Royal Philanthropic Vaccination Expedition, which is a milestone in health cooperation, and the Simon Ruiz Archive, which allows us to understand the ingenuity of the financial markets that shaped modern Europe. Looking ahead to the 2025 editions, Spain continues to demonstrate its commitment to humanitarian values. The archives of the European War Office, preserved by National Heritage at the Royal Palace Archive here in Madrid, are a moving testament to the aid provided to victims of the Great War from Spain. This approach is complemented by multinational nominations, such as the children's drawings and writings in times of war, which remind us that documentary memory serves as a refuge for dignity in the face of adversity. To cap it all, I would like to once again congratulate the Deputy Director General of State Archives, Ana Maria, and EURBICA. The Memory of the World Programme is a living project that, through digitization and international cooperation, ensures that our heritage serves as a tool for peace and understanding among nations. I wish you all a very productive day of work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Santiago. Dear colleagues, distinguished representative of International Center of Documentary Heritage, esteemed partners from Subdirectorate General of Spain State Archive, it's a great pleasure to address you on behalf of EURBICA, the European branch of International Council on Archive. It's a great pleasure to welcome you on this workshop. I would like to warmly thank the International Center for Documentary Heritage in Korea for bringing us together, and our Spanish colleagues for hosting here in Madrid this event. This gathering is more than technical exercise. It is a moment to reflect on what the documentary heritage we preserve truly represents and why it matters for far beyond our borders. Records rarely sit neatly within national boundaries, we know that. And European documentary heritage, it's, by its very nature, a heritage of connections. For centuries, Europe has been a crossroad of diplomacy, trade, migration, and cultural heritage. The records that have survived in our archives carry the traces of encounters between civilizations, have survived in our archives, and they keep ideas that shaped entire continent, and movement of the people and knowledge that left their mark far beyond the places where those documents now rest. They reflect shared histories, and they often best presented to the world through collaboration. A joint nomination may be the most accurate reflection of what the material itself represents, and it makes a stronger case for significance at the international level. This is something EURBICA resonates with deeply. We are strongly committed to the shared heritage preserved across our countries, and we are equally aware that much of it remains underrepresented on the international stage. Many collections of clear global relevance are still outside the memory of the World International Register, often because building the partnership needed for a strong nomination requires time, trust, and coordination. This workshop is how we want to support and encourage those partnerships. The UNESCO Memory of the World Programme provides an essential framework for identifying, safeguarding, and promoting documentary heritage of international significance, which closely aligns with EURBICA's own mission. Joint nominations give concrete expression to that collaborative spirit by working together across borders. We are strengthening individual proposals, but also reflecting the interconnected nature of our histories. Over the next couple of days, our focus will be practical, refining nominations, engaging with experienced evaluators, and building the professional relationships that turn ambition into successful proposal. Nominations do not emerge from good intention alone. They emerge from relationships and from the groundwork that takes time to develop. Bringing people together to do that work is, in itself, part of the mission. As we look ahead to the next nomination cycle, Let us approach this work in a spirit of cooperation, openness, and shared responsibility. The documentary heritage we preserve is not only part of our institutional or national identity, but also part of our common human heritage. Allow me to conclude by once again thanking our partners in Korea and Spain for their leadership and commitment, and by wishing you all a productive and inspiring workshop. I'm confident that your work here in Madrid will lead to strong, meaningful, and impactful nominations. Thank you.
Mr. Santiago Sierra, the Secretary General of the Spanish National Commission for Cooperation with UNESCO. Mr. Cristian Anicha, President of EURBICA. Ms. Ana Lopez from Ministry of Culture of Spain. Distinguished guests, dear colleagues and experts. My name is Yoon Myung-jo, Secretary General of the International Center for Documentary Heritage under the auspices of UNESCO. It is my great pleasure to invite you to this international event on promoting European joint nomination to the UNESCO Memory of the World Register in World. I believe this gathering provides an important opportunity to strengthen international cooperation through documentary heritage and to share the collective memory of humanity. The Memory of the World programs plays a vital role not only in preserving documentary heritage, but also in sharing its value with the global communities. In this context, joint nominations are especially meaningful as they connect across countries and help build a more inclusive and shared narrative. Following today's open sessions, institutions from across Europe will present their nomination ideal and experience, and the international expert will provide advice and consultation. Europe has played a key role in the Memory of the World programs based on its experience and a strong commitment to nominations. While regional cooperation mechanisms within the memory MoW community is not yet officially structured, ICDH will continue to promote the value of the MoW program to facilitate related partnership. We hope this effort will continue to grow and first strengthen joint nomination and international cooperations. We also encourage your continued interest and active engagement. Finally, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the EURBICA and the Ministry of Culture of Spain for the close cooperation and to all of you for your participation. Thank you.
Distinguished representatives, dear colleagues and partners, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to welcome you today to this workshop dedicated to promoting joint nomination to the UNESCO Memory of the World International Register. Let me begin by expressing my sincere appreciation to the organizers and partners of this initiative, EURBICA, the European branch of the International Council on Archives, the Spanish Ministry of Culture, and the UNESCO International Center for Documentary Heritage in Korea. Thank you very much. Your collaboration reflects precisely the spirit that this workshop seeks to strengthen cooperation across borders in safeguarding our shared documentary heritage. The UNESCO Memory of the World Programme, launched in 1992, was created to protect documentary heritage of outstanding universal value, to ensure its preservation and to make it accessible to all. At its core lies a simple yet powerful idea that the documentary memory of humanity belongs to all of us and that its loss will be irreparable. Today, this idea is more relevant than ever. In a world facing rapid change, digital transformation, and at times conflicts and fragility, preservation documentary heritage is not only about the past, but also about identify, knowledge, and the foundation of our future. Spain holds a remarkable collection of documentary heritage recognized by the UNESCO under its Memory of the World Programme, highlights its major contribution to global history and culture. This inscription reflects Spain's central role in key historical processes such as exploration, diplomacy, science, and cultural exchange. Among the most significant documents are the Treaty of Tordesillas and the Capitulation of Santa Fe, which shaped the age of exploration and the formation of the modern world. Early democratic traditions are represented by the Decree of León, considered a milestone in European parliamentary history, as said my colleague before. Spain's archival heritage also illustrates social struggles and intercultural relations such as the Libre de Sindicat de Remensa and the Keiko Embassy documents. Medieval cultural production is reflected in the Beatus manuscripts and the Codex Callistinus, both essential for understanding the European religious and intellectual life. The global reach of the Spanish Empire is evident in collections like the indigenous language vocabularies and the work of Bernardino of Sahagún, which are key sources of non-European cultures. Scientific and intellectual contributions are further highlighted by the legacy of Santiago Ramón y Cajal. Major archival institutions such as the General Archive of Simancas preserve extensive record of the Spanish monarchy, while other collections document global milestones like the Magallanes Elcano circumnavigation and the humanitarian effort such as the Royal Philanthropic Vaccine Expedition. Finally, more recent archives, ranging from the diplomatic correspondences during World War to the children's wartime drawing, demonstrate Spain's continued role in preservation, memory of global conflicts, and the human experience. Overall, Spanish inscription in the Memory of the World Register underscore its enduring influence as a bridge between cultures and as a key contributor to the humanity's shared documentary heritage. These examples highlight a key message for today's workshop. Documentary heritage does not recognize border, nor should our efforts to preserve it. Joint nominations are not only a technical mechanism, they are a powerful tool for dialogue, cooperation, and mutual understanding. They allow us to connect collections, narratives, and perspective that transcends national frameworks, and to present them as a part of a truly global memory. These workshops, therefore, comes at a crucial moment. As new nomination cycles open, including the current call for submission to the memory of the World Registers, there is a unique opportunity to promote high-quality collaborative proposal that reflects shared stories and common values. Your expertise, your institutions, and your willingness to work together are essential to achieving this goal. I wish you a productive and inspiring workshops, and I look forward to the discussion and the collaboration that will emerge over the coming days. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much to our authorities. So we now conclude this opening session, and we move to the next of the program, inviting to the podium the guest speakers that are Jan Bos, Joachim Gierlich, Jussi Nuorteva, and Danina Baltina. So please, you are invited to come to the podium, and to introduce them. And please to give the floor to Yuhi Jan from the ICDH Korea. Yuhi, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Christina, for allowing me to introduce our distinguished experts. And ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Jan Bos. And Mr. Bos is a distinguished expert in documented heritage from the Netherlands, with a long career at the National Library of the Netherlands, where he served in various roles, including head of collections. He is currently chair of the UNESCO Memory of the World International Advisory Committee and editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Documented Heritage. He has also been a member of the Memory of the World Register subcommittee from 2006 to 2023, including serving as its chair, and has been actively involved in the international library community through his work with IFLA. So with his extensive experience and leadership within this Memory of the World program, we are honored to have him open today's session. And he will speak on an overview of the Memory of the World program, which focuses on its vision, activities, and development. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Jan Bos, or Christy. Yes.
Colleagues, dear friends of the Memory of the World program, thank you for inviting me to this workshop and to beautiful Madrid. Welcome to all participants, also on my behalf. I'm sure this will be a very fruitful workshop because of the setting in which it has been presented. And I look forward to working with you. But let me start with a word of gratitude and recognition to the organizers of this workshop, to EURBICA, to EURBICA, the European branch of the International Council on Archives, to the Ministry of Culture of Spain that's hosting us in this nice auditorium, and to ICDH. the International Center of Documentary Heritage in Cheongju, South Korea. The Republic of Korea, South Korea, has been the strongest supporter of Memory of the World almost since its very beginning, by hosting conferences, by organizing workshops, by awarding the Jixi Prize every 2 years, by establishing the International Center of Documentary Heritage, and so on. So thank you to ICDH. The Memory of the World program is about documents, about the safeguarding and preservation of documentary heritage. And while I was speaking, you have been watching documents all the time, many types of documents, books, letters, archival materials, maps, pictures, films, woodcuts, music scores, sound recordings, and even digital documents. What is a document in Memory of the World speak? A document is an object comprising analog or digital informational content and the carrier on which it resides, content and carrier. And the content may comprise signs or codes such as text, images, still images or moving images, and sounds, which can be copied or migrated. And the carrier, the material, may have important aesthetic, cultural, or technical qualities. It may have. And what then is documentary heritage? Documentary heritage comprises those single documents or groups of documents of significant and enduring value to a community, a culture, a country, or to humanity generally, and whose deterioration or loss would be a harmful impoverishment. And the world's documentary heritage is of global importance and responsibility to all. You all know this, of course, but I think it's good to show again the definitions that are used in the Memory of the World program for documents and documentary heritage. A bit of explanation might help to understand this rather theoretical kind of definitions. I'm sure that everybody will have heard of the Anne Frank diary, written by this talented schoolgirl in Amsterdam while she was hiding for the Nazis during World War II. It's famous all around the world. There are transcripts and photos and facsimiles and digital copies of the diary books. There are hundreds of editions and translations. So the text and even the appearance of the books are safeguarded. But still, many people would feel it would be a harmful impoverishment to humanity if the original, authentic diary books would somehow get lost. Well, fortunately, they're kept under very safe conditions. But the point is that originals are unique and irreplaceable, and facsimiles are not the same. That means that the original diaries can be regarded as part of the world documentary heritage. And the first element in the description of documentary heritage, the significant and enduring value to a community, a culture, a country, or to humanity generally, relates to the impact that documents have had and maybe still have, in whatever way, on their time and their region, on individuals, and on communities. And such documents, maybe reports or testimonials or even symbols of important events, they may come from persons with a great influence, good or bad, in history or culture. They may be the earliest or only remaining exemplars of important innovations. They may have an exceptional form or style. In all these cases, we speak of the significant and enduring value and, consequently, of documentary heritage. Here you see, for instance, a page from the New Testament in the translation of Martin Luther well, the influence of Martin Luther on the world history, not only in a religious sense, but also in a political sense, is enormous. So as a symbol of that influence, the Luther translation of the New Testament can very much be regarded. And also the same goes for so many political treatises sealed by all the participating parties. So, the Memory of the World aims at safeguarding the world's documentary heritage. What you see here is the Darwini papyrus, the oldest book in Europe. It's dated between 340 to 320 BC, and preserved due to its partial carbonization on a funeral pyre. UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, was established in 1945, very shortly after World War II, a war that had been extremely devastating in many parts of the globe. And one of UNESCO's main objectives is protecting the world's heritage in all its diversity. And since 1972, the UNESCO Convention concerning the protection of the world's cultural and natural heritage, better known as the World Heritage Convention, recognizes that certain places on Earth are of outstanding universal value, should form part of the common heritage of humankind. They must be protected and preserved. And in 2003, UNESCO launched the Convention for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage. Intangible cultural heritage, also known as living heritage, refers to the practices, representations, expressions, knowledge and skills transmitted by communities from generation to generation. Many of these traditions are still on the edge of disappearing. Now, from its very first start, the Memory of the World Programme had many similarities with the World Heritage Convention and the Intangible Heritage Convention. The main difference is that Memory of the World aims particularly at the safeguarding of documentary heritage. UNESCO established the Memory of the World Programme in 1992, and this was shortly after the ending of the Cold War, when there was a rise of democratic movements across different parts of the globe. And impetus came from the growing awareness of the perilous state of preservation and of access to documentary heritage in many countries. Worldwide, significant collections of documents had suffered a variety of fates: looting and dispersal, illegal trading, intentional destruction, inadequate housing and funding, and they all played their part. Much had vanished forever and much was in danger. And the need was deeply felt for a global strategy to ensure the long-term preservation of documentary heritage for its historic and evidentiary value, as well as for research and educational purposes. It was also felt that documentary heritage differs from the general heritage within the World Heritage Convention by its nature, because of different ways of preservation and because of different options for accessibility. So for these reasons, a special program, the Memory of the World Programme, was established to be led by experts in the field of identifying and safeguarding documentary heritage. Let me give you some examples. Documents are extremely vulnerable. They suffer from internal decay, from brittle paper and ink corrosion. They suffer from insects and pests and mold. They suffer from insecure storage, bad handling, frequent use. And they suffer from air pollution and climate change. The rising sea level won't stop at the doorsteps of archives and libraries. And documents also suffer very easily from intentional man-made destructions. From early times on, books and manuscripts have been burned, archives have been destroyed, libraries have been bombed. individual documents fell victim to censorship on religious or moral or political grounds. Complete collections were demolished during and after civil and international wars. After all, the most radical way to shatter a culture, to tear down the past and to change history is by destroying all related documents. Documents are also different because they are almost always movable. You can't move a landscape or a building, but it's easy to take documents to other places, whether that move is legal and appropriate or not. Consequently, documents are also rather easy to hide for whatever reason and may easily disappear. Documents, and there's another difference with landscapes and architecture, documents are very easy to duplicate if they haven't already been produced in very large quantities at their very beginning. One can make reprints, facsimiles, photocopies, and in the last decades, at least the content of billions of documents has been reproduced by digitization. But reproduction also opens the door for adaptations, manipulations, forgeries. Photoshopping and creating fake documents by artificial intelligence has never been so easy as it is now. Thanks to reproduction and digitization, the accessibility of the content of documents is far greater than with other forms of heritage. To see the originals, one still has to travel. But for taking note of their content, a digital copy will usually do. And these digital copies can often be reached from your desk at home. Documents are enormously powerful. They spread knowledge and news. They spread ideas and opinions. They create national, cultural, and linguistic identities. They are testimonies to the past, whatever that past looked like. They can be extremely beautiful, both by form and content. They evoke all kinds of emotions: admiration, enthusiasm, loyalty, wonder, inclusiveness and exclusiveness, disgust, anger, and pain. They're inspirational for the thinking and behavior of people in the present and the future, and for the creation of new documents. Creators of documents have been awarded with the highest prizes in the fields of politics, sciences, literature. Meanwhile, other people have paid with their lives for writing, publishing, selling, or possessing certain documents. Documents have changed our perspectives of the past, of other peoples and cultures. Documents have saved the world, have changed the world. I'm not talking about only good documents or about bad documents. Memory of the World Programme is not about qualifying which documents and which kind of history is good and which document, which perspective on history is bad. It's about the importance, the significance of documents, the influence they've had. And if, for instance, the Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto written by Karl Marx are on the international register, it's not because UNESCO is a communist organization. It's not because UNESCO would promote communism throughout the world. It is because these documents have had an enormous impact on the history of the world and still have today. So we are not talking about good documents or bad documents only. And the same goes for the black pages in our histories. I'm coming from the Netherlands, and the Netherlands played a large part in the slave trades, especially to the West Indies. We're not proud of that part of history, but it is part of our history, and we have to recognize that. And it is being recognized as well in the International Register by all sorts of nominations coming from colonizing and colonized countries, and coming from people that suffered from the slave trade and people that profited from the slave trade. You see some examples of items on the international registers, journals of slave trading ships and so on. But also, and I like that very much, a song sung by the enslaved people in Barbados in the Caribbean. And it was written down by a Scottish nobleman who visited Barbados, and later he published it in Scotland. And in fact, it's the earliest example of a document coming from enslaved people in the world. Song is being performed, you can hear it on the internet. I already said documents about carrier and content. And sometimes the carrier is not very, very beautiful or exceptional. There are so many archival documents that have nothing special. That's fine. If their content is significant, then that will do. The same goes for books. If you have the book on childbed fever by Semmelweis, that has saved the lives of so many thousands or hundreds of thousands of women who would have died from child disease. The book itself has nothing special, but the content is extremely important. And the other way around, if you look at the Jigshi is the short name for a much longer name, a book with Buddhist prayers and thoughts that as such is not very exceptional. But it is the oldest representation of a book printed by movable metal type. Almost 100 years before Gutenberg in the West, this book was printed in Korea. So because of that physical characterization, because of this quality, the book is used to name the Jigshi Prize after it, but also it's represented, of course, on the International Register because of these qualities. So, having given you a view of the types of documents, their impacts, their importance, their significance, let me come to the vision of the Memory of the World Programme from its very start. And that is, it was already cited this morning, that documentary heritage belongs to all. That documentary heritage should be preserved and protected for all. And that it should be permanently accessible to all. And all means all. Men and women, young and old, from your own country or from foreign countries. Students and scholars and the general public. The world's documentary heritage belongs to all mankind. And of course, there are owners of documents, be it individuals or institutions or governments, and their rights should be respected. But they can't do with documentary heritage whatever they want. They can't destroy it, they can't manipulate it, they can't neglect it, because it belongs to all and should be preserved for all and should be accessible for all. So that was the vision. Now the mission of the Memory of the World follows from that vision. Mission of the program is to support the identification of documentary heritage. This is an important thing. It's to identify documents, identify documentary heritage. You don't have to look only at the official museums, archives, and libraries. There's so much documentary heritage in much smaller institutions among the general public. And we're not only talking about documents that have been produced by large publishing houses, documents that are made by official movie producers, documents in the official archives. There are so many other documents that are under the horizon, so to say, and there also needs need to be identified. They need to be preserved. All the documentary heritage should be preserved. The mission is also to assist in the universal access. No firewalls on your computer, no access only to certain categories of people. Universal access to everyone for all the documentary heritage. And the mission of the program is to raise awareness of its existence in the first place and of its significance, because if people are convinced of this existence and significance, they are more eager to work towards identification, preservation, and access. In 2015, the program had been running from 1992. The first international register items were inscribed in 1996, but it was still a program. And in 2015, it was supported for the first time by a formal recommendation. The recommendation concerning the preservation of and access to documentary heritage, including in digital form. And those final 4 words were important. A recommendation accepted, unanimously accepted by all member states of UNESCO at its General Conference on the 17th of November 2015. A recommendation is not the same as a convention. A convention, if countries, member states of UNESCO sign a convention, they have the legal obligation to live to the standards of the convention. A recommendation is a moral obligation, you might say. So by accepting and supporting this recommendation, all the UNESCO member states have taken on themselves the duty to protect and make accessible documentary heritage. As said, it's a moral obligation and not a legal obligation. So far about the vision of the Memory of the World program. A few words about its organization. It's led by an international advisory committee of 14 experts coming from all over the world and representing both the archival world, the library world, museums, different schools in these disciplines, different regions, and there's an equal gender representation in the committee. It has 3 subcommittees. Subcommittee for Preservation, that also takes care of the digital documents, Education and Research, and a special and very important subcommittee, the Register Subcommittee for the International Register. Program is supported, and the largest part of the work is being done by the Secretariat. Compared to the World Heritage and the Intangible Heritage, it's a very small secretariat, only a few people at UNESCO headquarters in Paris. And it's part, and that's important, of the communication and information sector. It's not part of the culture sector in UNESCO. World Heritage and Intangible Heritage are both in the culture sector, and Memory of the World program are in the communication information sector, which has its advantages and disadvantages. It makes working together a bit more difficult. On the other hand, it gives more independence. The guiding documents, as said in the Memory of the World program, are the recommendation 2015 that we just discussed, the general guidelines revised in 2021, the Memory of the World Register Companion, which is being revised all the time. It's adapted to new insights and to, well, all kinds of issues that has been raised, and they can be implied in the companion. So there's always an up-to-date version on the website, and the website gives more information and more background, of course, and I'm sure you know how to find it. Apart from the International Advisory Committee and subcommittees and the Secretariat, there are the regional and national Memory of the World committees. 4 regional committees, 1 for Central Asia and the Pacific, 1 for Latin America and the Caribbean, 1 for the African region, that's a sub-Saharan African region, and 1 for the Arab countries. The last one for the Arab countries was just established 1 year ago, and it's a very good development to see that these countries that are often underrepresented in all sorts of UNESCO and Memory of the World activities have now their own regional committee. And to a certain extent, the same goes for the African Memory of the World Regional Committee, ARCMO. It has been established, well, some time ago, but it was revitalized, and they say themselves it was redynamized 2 years ago, and they're very active now. So that's good. And there's a strongly growing number of national Memory of the World committees. Last year I counted 98, and this year there are 106 national Memory of the World committees. Both the national and the regional committees have a large level of autonomy. Within the framework of the general guidelines and recommendation, they can determine their own policy. They can choose their own activities. They can establish a register, a national register or a regional register, or not, just what they like. They can support the composition, the drafting of new nominations, or not. They can support institutions in their countries or region, or focus on other activities. It's a large scale of autonomy that these regional and national committees have. Many of them have their own registers with the same criteria that are applied for the international register. Many of them publish publications, newsletters, report of best practices, exhibition catalogs, inventories, whatever. And they organize meetings within their region or their country. Meetings like this one, seminars, workshops, conferences, all kinds of ways to get together. And it's so important, it has been stressed already in the beginning, to have these contacts, to communicate with each other, especially in a program like this that is about crossing borders, about international significance of documents. There are 9 Memory of the World knowledge centers. And that's an initiative that started 10 years ago in Macau, autonomous region of China. And now there are 9 already, 4 in China, 1 in the Republic of Korea, 1 in Ivory Coast, Mexico, Kyrgyzstan, and Australia. What are they doing? They're usually connected to a university, to a faculty of a university. And they promote and organize academic research and education. They organize conferences, workshops, make publications, exhibitions, websites, and so on and so on. You can imagine that. And there's also ICDH, the International Center of Documentary Heritage, which is very active, and we're most grateful for that. What they're doing, for instance, digitization of documents on the International Register. They also organize conferences, webinars. They are very active on social media. They do workshops and so on. And they publish books and videos on documentary heritage and on the program. And one of them, and I'd like to give that example, is the International Journal of Documentary Heritage. Its 2nd volume just was published last December. And it's very good to have an international journal, especially in the field of documentary heritage. It was not there, it's there now thanks to the initiative of ICDH. There's a lot of cooperation with NGOs, with the public and private sector, with International Council on Archives, with International Federation of Library Associations, with CCAAA, with ICOM, with Google Arts and Culture, with the World Digital Library, the Open Heritage Coalition, Wikimedia, International Comparative Literature Association. The Jigsaw Prize should be mentioned here as well as part of these activities. And it's growing, it's expanding, this cooperation outside the strict, well, documentary heritage world. So that's a very good development. Some of the publications, this is examples, there are guidelines, there are newsletters. There's a 5-volume school kit for presenting the Memory of the World program to children at primary and secondary schools. There are children's books, there are calendars, videos, and so on and so forth. There are books especially about the International Register. And speaking of mentioning the International Register, it's one activity that I didn't mention so far. And of course, for many, the International Register is the Memory of the World program. That's not correct. That's why I wanted to present first all the other activities. Okay. Okay.
I will be short. Yeah. I told him.
Memory of the World program, the International Register is the shop window of the Memory of the World program. A shop window, nothing more and nothing less than a shop window. It shows what's there. It is attractive. It's an example of what you can find. But there are so many other activities, and that, well, I've mentioned them to you. It is it has unique and irreplaceable documents. You know that, with a significance that transcends boundaries of countries and cultures. Presently, 570 items have been inscribed. It should be mentioned that there is an unequal representation. There's an over-representation of items from Europe on the International Register, and there's a strong under-representation of materials from Africa and the Arab region. And that is something that is being taken into account at the moment very strongly. But it should be mentioned here as well. I'll go very quickly through the nomination process that every inscription goes through. It's a 2-year cycle. There's a call for nominations by the Secretariat, at the deadline to that. Everybody can initiate a nomination, but the submission of nominations has to go via the National Commission or commissions of for UNESCO. And there's a maximum of 2 nominations per country per cycle, except for joint nominations. The number of joint nominations from any country or collaborating countries is unlimited. It goes to several checks. It will be uploaded on a platform open for comments. If there are comments and contestations, and a special process for dialogue or mediation will be initiated. Then there will be assessment by the Important Registers Subcommittee, which result in preliminary recommendations. And that's an opportunity for the nominators to respond to these recommendations, to questions that the Registers Subcommittee may have raised. And after that, the final Registers Subcommittee recommendations with explanations go to the International Advisory Committee, which makes the final judgments. These judgments only have to be confirmed by the Executive Board of UNESCO. And the outcome can be in four possibilities, 4 options. Inscription, of course, which is the best option. Provisional inscription, which means it is inscribed, but something is lacking. One single signature, a single document that should be there is missing, but it can be added. Refer and resubmit means it has potential, but we're not convinced. Please refine your argumentation. Please add other documents that could be included and are as significant as the one that you're nominating, things like that. Or rejection. This does not meet the standards of the international register. It's not of international significance, or simply the materials are not documentary heritage. We have seen nominations about sculptures, about paintings, and so on, that are not documentary heritage. The criteria for inscription go about, you know it, the historical significance. What kind of political or economic developments, social spiritual movements, world-changing events, changes in patterns of life and culture are represented in the documents. They're about eminent personalities, about unique phenomena, noteworthy traditions, critical innovations. There are examples of excellence in the arts, literature, science, technology, sports, and so on. Let's not forget that Memory of the World is about documents. It's not about these events. Yes, it's about these events as far as they are being represented by these documents. You're nominating documents. So what do these documents tell about an important moment or development in history? And are these documents the best testimonies? Do they present the best, most complete picture? And then it can be that one document is a representation of an historic event or development. Let's take this telegram of Austria-Hungary's declaration of war on Serbia in 1914. There have been many declarations of war, and not every single one would apply for the international register. But this one, in fact, initiated the First World War. So this one, as a representation of that war, is a very good item for inscription. Form and style is a criterion. Is the document that's nominated a fine exemplar of outstanding beauty and craftsmanship? Or is it a new or unusual type of carrier, a type of document that's now obsolete or superseded? Does it have a great community or spiritual significance, like the children's drawings and writings that have been mentioned already this morning, or like a slave register from the British Caribbean, which is often the earliest trace that descendants of enslaved people can find where their great-great-grandparents came from. And the new criterion is about gender equality. Do the nominated documents, what do they say about gender equality? And there are 4 levels, and I'm not going to explain them now, but gender equality is a focus point for UNESCO in general, and that's why it was added as a criterion to the Memory of the World program as well. And for instance, the Aletta Jacobs papers are a very good example. Aletta Jacobs was someone who was the first female student at the Dutch university, the first female doctor, first one who took special care for women in healthcare, but also very active in promoting women's voting rights on a national and international level. We are not going to talk in this workshop, and I regret it a little bit, about the identification, the provenance, the authenticity, and the uniqueness of documents. These are very important aspects when you're drafting a nomination as well. Because it has to be clear what exactly is being nominated. It has to be clear what the provenance is, where they came from, if it's clear that they have not been manipulated in the meantime. So their authenticity should be established. And uniqueness and irreplaceability are also items that sometimes cause confusion. We're only focusing on significance in this workshop, but these, I wanted to mention that these elements are very important as well. A single word about joint nominations, which relate to more than one country, to international events, persons or developments, to colonizing and colonized countries, and to scattered collections. Part of a collection is here, part is there. There's an unlimited number per cycle, and the advantage is that the multinational significance has already been demonstrated because more than one country are nominating. Maybe it's not international, but at least it's multinational. They need consent from the national commissions of all the involved countries. This is my final slide, and it is about the present developments in the program. As I said, there's a growing number of national and regional Memory of the World committees and their registers and their nominations and of knowledge centers and of all the activities that are initiated by these regional national committees and by the knowledge centers and ICDH. Nevertheless, there is still an unequal representation of certain regions, but also, for instance, of popular culture confronted to culture with a capital C, and underrepresentation of minority groups from countries, but also an underrepresentation of women, for instance. Very few documents are written by women or dealing with women, female issues. Nominations of born digital documents are a matter of concern that we are working on because born digital documents are dynamic by their nature. They are not fixed and finite. You can't say this is the document. No, it's represented again and again on different screens. So what's the carrier? In different modes, and they may change over every minute. They may be individualized on your screen. So nominations for born digital documents need special criteria, and we're working on them. I did not talk about the contested nominations because it's only a very small part of the whole number of nominations, but it is a hot issue. And if you like, I'll tell more about it, but it's something that I hope you'll never get confronted with. We're dealing with artificial intelligence, of course, and post-digital technologies. So far, we always thought that documents are created by human beings. And now with artificial intelligence, who is creating them? Artificial intelligence itself. Are they documents if they're not created by human beings? Well, they look like documents. I can read them like documents. I can see there the movies like documents. So we have to deal with that as well, and also in the way artificial intelligence can be used for nominating and so on. We are looking for more alignment with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, with other programs and activities in UNESCO, like the other heritage conventions, and with other partners, of course. And we were worried about the safeguarding of documentary heritage in conflict zones. The program itself, I think, can do little more than supporting the protests that are already coming from UNESCO headquarters itself against the intentional destruction of cultural heritage in general and documentary heritage. There's so many examples in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Sudan, in so many places around the world of intentional destruction of documentary heritage. So the Memory of the World program itself is flourishing, but the state of documentary heritage around the world is still very perilous, and that's something that we have to continue to care about. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bose, for your insightful overview and for setting the stage for today's open session. And now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Joachim Gierlihis. Yes, Dr. Gierlihis is a specialist in Islamic and art history and an experienced curator and cultural heritage expert. And he is currently serving as senior curator at the Department of the Culture and Tourism in Abu Dhabi. His previous roles include Director of Special Collections and Archives at the Qatar National Library and curatorial positions at the Museum of Islamic Art in Doha. He has also been a member of UNESCO Memory of the World Register Subcommittee since 2014, bringing valuable experiences in evaluation and interpretation of documentary heritage. And with his extensive experience in documentary heritage, he will speak on the Memory of the World program, looking into the content from now on, and kindly understand that we are running short on time because of the time limitations. So yeah.
Very short.
Yeah. Sorry about, yeah, we start a bit late, so yeah. Thank you.
All right. Good morning and warm welcome to everyone. Let me say, in spite of the fact that we are running a bit late, but no worries about a few personal words. I'm really happy to be here, coming from Abu Dhabi, actually via Cairo to Madrid. It was a few weeks back absolutely unclear whether it would be even possible to fly out of the country. Some people moved to other cities. They went on by bus to Oman and then tried to whatever reach other countries. It has calmed down right now, but this war or these war activities, even if UAE has quite a sufficient system to protect, made it all of a sudden super clear, I would say, very clear how vulnerable heritage and documents, museums. I mean, think about the UAE opened 3 museums last year, major museums, iconic buildings like the National Museum, 60 or I don't know how many meters high, these kind of feather-like towers. I mean, it's a perfect target. I mean, you can't really miss it if you want to find it. So there was really a kind of, I hope, a rethinking how easily a very safe place can be turned into something else. But that's enough. Let's look into the paper. I will actually skip everything what has been already said. My idea was to speak about a bit the content. What is actually in the program? This is the history. We have heard this. Then we know there are several registers. The international one is the flagship, I would say, or as Jan also mentioned, the show. What is it called? Shop window. But in fact, we have others. But I think what is very important that we understand what has been already inscribed and what has not been so far inscribed or is really missing or only very few nominations. And so far, we have 570 nominations. I'm talking now solely, exclusively about the international register. Could you give me that? Sorry. Thanks. So I started to look into this and try to find out what is there. And to cut it short, I have to admit that actually it is really difficult to understand what is on this register. I say it very clearly, and I will advocate strongly and directly and indirectly that something has to be done. Because if someone who is deeply in that program even has a problem to find out what is in and what is not, there is an improvement possible and necessary. Okay, here, how does it look? Oh yeah, okay, it's clear and large. This is basically the way you can search, because nobody wants to scroll or to browse through 570 whatever documents. So obviously you can search for countries, regional groups, country groups, collections, type of collections, submitted by the date. That's all fine, but this is all basically seen with the eyes of the program, of those who are behind the program, not actually very useful, let's say, not for most of the public. The public might be interested, as I was for this presentation, what is there and what is not. So there is only the general search field. And then you need to understand, you made a little click, search titles only, or you search everything. And that makes a huge difference. Search titles only often brings you very few or no result. Search everything brings you results, but not really related ones. Okay, let's take an example. I was thinking about, because I knew there is this autograph of Bach, so there must be composer, there must be famous documents related to famous musicians or composers. So I thought, okay, let's try to search for this. So of course, there is this collection type. You can choose music, audios, recording. If you do this, you find 19 nominations. I took screenshots. But then, of course, you find also, for example, the Frankfurt Auschwitz trial, very important, but I was not looking for this when I'm looking for musicians. And others, I don't mention all of them because my point is basically that this doesn't work that way. If you are adding composer, then you get 5 results, but strangely enough, Bach is missing. But I know Bach is there. Oh, what has happened? And then also I thought, okay, what's about Handel? What's about Beethoven? Okay, give it another try. I thought, okay, let's not actually do this selection by collection type, leave that open, just look for composer. All right, 30 nominations. That looks much better. Now we are coming more closely to what I intended, because I also remembered, because I was involved, there were 2 composers, Armenian composers. So there must be there, I knew this, but of course the public does not. Anyway, we can continue, and I have done this, the same thing for slavery, to save time now. I mean, I don't need to do the same thing. It's important whether you search for slavery or slave or enslaved. The best is enslaved, because if you, this is in the title, for slavery. Of course, clear hit, made the point. If you go for slavery full text, you also get a document on the slaves. I mean, the slaves in the Balkan. That's nice, but not what we were looking for. Anyway, to ramp up this exercise, you need basically to know what type of word you have to introduce, and this means there is something wrong, because you cannot expect that someone knows that enslaved is the best word to find the most nominations. That is nonsense, sorry. So what is the outcome? What is the result of this? The result of this, in my opinion, is clearly we have to do something, and the easiest way, from my experience, and I worked a bit with database, is that all nominations need to have like tags, keywords. That means we need to curate, I'm a curator, of course, we need to curate this platform, if you want to say, a little bit. And it's not that difficult. One could even think about, and that's my suggestion, that we ask the nominators already, give us a good title. I mean, I have said this so many times, please choose a title which makes sense, not only for you, but also for the public. And in addition to this, think about 5, better 10, better 15 good keywords, which really catch your text, your document. Yes, And of course, we could, important. Let's say if we now know better what is in the program, then that means also we know what is not in. For example, I think there's actually nothing related to oil. Can you imagine this? Or to the very important, I mean, I'm coming from the Gulf area, so I have chosen to pearl fishery, perfectly for joint nominations. I will not elaborate on this now further, but maybe also, let's say, juristical text. And then one could think, okay, you could do it in two ways. You could say, okay, we have this, we keep this in mind, and now we try to find important texts from the different parts of the world. Or, other way around, we go historically. We go to the, whatever, Babylonian stele and move up, whatever, to the 20th century. I mean, of course, everyone can nominate what he or she wants, and we are not, I think, not going to change this, but my point was it could make sense, or I think it would make sense, if we identify the strong fields, the weak fields, the gaps, and keep this in mind, and also those who want to nominate something know this better, can this find out better, and maybe even get inspired. Oh, actually, we have a document which would fill that gap and would go that way. This is basically what I wanted to say. It's more an inspirational presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jan and Joachim. So we have now reached our first question and answer sessions for the two experts. So we would like to hear your thoughts and any queries that you may have for the speakers. So if you want to participate, please raise the hand, and a member of the team will bring you the microphone. And we kindly ask you to state your name and affiliation before asking your question. So please, Jussi, you are first.
Yes, Jussi Nuorteva from Finland. I was very interested in the question about artificial intelligence, because it is something that really is coming. So that I was working with a young doctor at Warwick University, Sun Park from Korea, who has been working also with the UNESCO Committee of Korea. And she did her PhD on autonomous artificial intelligence, so that artificial intelligence that can program itself and create products that can be fitting the criteria of the memory of the bird. What would be your comments about this?
My comments would be that we would have to study that. You can't deny that there is artificial intelligence. We will have to live with it. And it's bringing a lot of progress, I think, in many fields. And it could bring progress in the field of documentary heritage, or at least the preservation of documents and the accessibility of documents. So that's fine. At the same time, we all know, I think, the dangers of documentary heritage and the way it can dominate the discussions, it can dominate the information, and in fact, in the end, wipe out everything that does not fit into its own creation and in the way it has developed. So there's a real danger in that, and we have to recognize it at the same time. As I said, the Preservation Subcommittee is looking into that matter with experts on the field, not only the committee itself, but they're using experts. And it's not a strong answer, but somehow we have to combine the advantages of artificial intelligence and with dealing with the disadvantages and the dangers that it represents. But it's one of the reasons why it is so important for the program to look at it. And not only for the program, of course, but also for administrations, for governments all around the world. It's really threatening, but at the same time you can use it. It's the best answer I can give you. What?
Not really, no.
Okay, I'm Zoltán Szatucsek from the National Archives of Hungary, but I think I'm also with the hat of the EURBICA here. And so thank you for the Spanish and the Korean colleagues to organize this workshop. But on behalf of the EURBICA, I think it would be nice to respond to a question that how do you see the potential cooperation between the Memory of the World Programme and with the EURBICA. So I didn't know these regional Memory of the World committees existed, and of course Europe is missing. Of course, I also see that there is a kind of imbalance or inequality on the list of the documents, but the European countries also needed, particularly the archives are needed very much the visibility what this kind of register can offer to us. We are in a permanent race with the other domains, with the museums, with the libraries, in order to catch the visibility in this kind of media mass in order to catch them. So we need this visibility, and I think this Memory of the World Programme is a chance for us to be in the shop window. So on the other hand, our mission with the EURBICA board is to make the European documentary heritage visibility a bit more balanced too, because you can see that the West European countries, northern countries are more visible or can participate better in this class. For example, the Balkan countries or the Baltic countries or East Europe in general. So, okay, these were my considerations, and how you see the potential cooperation between the Memory of the World Programme and EURBICA. What chances we have? How can we contribute, and how can the program contribute to our goals?
No. Okay. I'll start. You can add. Well, thank you very much for your question, because I think it's an important question, and the whole matter of cooperation on various levels is an important one. I'm very glad that EURBICA is organizing this workshop together with ICDH and the Ministry of Culture in Spain, because to my experience, I think that there has always been a theoretical cooperation between International Council on Archives and Memory of the World Programme. And the same goes for the International Federation of Library Associations and the Memory of the World Programme. It's there, and there is some representation, but what in fact are they doing together? What kind of joint perspective do they offer to the people and the materials that are concerned? What I try to explain in my presentation is that there's a lot going on also on national and regional level. And EURBICA is working on a regional level in the region of Europe. And I think, especially at these levels, there can be a stronger cooperation, increase of the cooperation that's already there, especially through these national commissions or even regional commission. There is no regional commission, I must say, within the MoW World Programme for Europe, which has its historic reasons, and which is also because Europe is already so dominant, so overrepresented on the international register and in other activities, that having also a regional committee for a long time was considered not appropriate. If you look at, you mentioned the differences between, let's say, Eastern Europe and Western Europe, to make it easy. Within the whole memory of the World Programme, there is, you have to recognize that the program was built on Western European concepts. The whole idea of what is heritage, what are documents, what is authenticity, what is significance. These are the way these concepts are understood is a Western European way of thinking, and we need the cooperation with other countries, other regions, to understand that a document in Africa is something different from a document in Europe, and significance in Eastern Europe may have a different meaning from significance in Western Europe, even if you use the same words. So you have to be in contact with each other. You have to discuss things like that, and that's one of the reasons why I think workshops like this, and not only in a question and answers setting, but also during a coffee break or a lunch, are so important. So I see your point and I recognize it, and I think it's something that exactly in this kind of settings should be discussed further. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also from my side, I mean, working in a non-European region and with an absolutely international team, people coming from all backgrounds, all countries, all whatsoever, it made me very clear how much. Jan mentioned it for the Memory of the World program, but also, let's say, the concept of museum. It's basically all created and then we implemented from, let's say, the West, from Europe. But it is changing. It is changing. I think other parts of the world start, and it is very good to develop their own ideas. It goes sometimes slowly. There are still experts brought in to help, but it is really changing. It starts with, changing terminology. Middle East is not any longer really appropriate to be used. I don't want to discuss this now, but I mean, these are signs of change. To come back to your specific question, I think, and this is why I like this workshop that's focusing on the joint nominations. I think in some regions, and I can only speak for that Arab world, joint nominations are absolutely necessary. It's sometimes actually impossible, and this is maybe also a reason why so few documents are inscribed, that one country alone can do it, because they don't have what is needed for this alone. I don't know whether they like this analysis or not. That's up to them. This is the analysis. So if joint nominations can be promoted, and maybe promoted in a practical way that, for example, European or other countries show it can work, or how it works, and who work together with whom, I could imagine it could also inspire, or it could help to say, oh, maybe we should also think about this. And, we want to do something on pearl fishery, so Qatar has one and Kuwait has two, and so we bring this material together, and then actually we have something which is convincing and could be inscribed. So I see more this aspect, and hope that there will be a lot of successful joint nominations. Actually, there are already, and sometimes even across the borders. I think there is one between Germany and Iran regarding a very famous medieval text. Was it Mevlana? Or I can't remember, it doesn't matter. So it is possible, and this should be maybe also something one should consider. Maybe not even in one region, but even far across. Of course, we have some type of document, what is it called? Independent states when they met first, and this was obvious, of course, a joint nomination. But there are also others. Sorry, I was a bit beyond your question.
Hello, my name is Dmitry Popov from the Bulgarian Archive State Agency. Thank you for the very interesting presentations. I have to admit that during the coffee break, I would like to find out more about the differences of significance in Western and Eastern European understanding. But in the meanwhile, given the topic of this meeting, I would like to find out more about adding documents to existing encryptions. And that is, more specifically, you mentioned that there is a 2 nominations limit per country, but no limit for joint nominations. My question in particular is, if we would like to add a document to an inscription that is existing already, do these fall within the no limit or to the 2 nominations limit in this case? And also, do we need to secure agreement from the national commissions of the countries that are participating in this joint nomination, or do we need to contact directly the nominators, in this case the institutions that are custodians or keepers of these records that are in the inscription? Thank you very much.
That's better for you.
Well, thank you for your question. I'm thinking of an example. Well, for example, the documents regarding the slave trades between Netherlands and the Caribbean area have been inscribed on the International Register. And in the last cycle, on the country, now it's a country of Aruba, additional documents had been discovered that could form part of the nomination. And there's a special procedure indeed for that kind of addition to an existing nomination. And that procedure was followed in that case. It does not mean that the whole nomination process has to be repeated, because the significance of the documents has already been demonstrated and accepted and recognized. So the only thing that has to be done is that the documents that should be added are indeed of the same quality, the same level, and regarding the same subject, of course, as the documents that are already inscribed. And that can be done by having a short nomination form, shorter than the usual one. It has to go through the National Commission of course, the country that's nominating, and through the national commissions of the other countries, because it's in addition to their nomination and they should agree with that. Usually that should be a formality, but it is a step that has to be taken, yes. And I'm not completely sure about the second question, whether it counts to the number of nominations of a country. I think it's not counting, but maybe because it happens so rarely, I don't think it's explicitly meant in the guidelines. I would have to check. I don't think it is, but in that, well, I don't think it is. That's my answer. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Just wanted to comment the question about European level cooperation, so that I have been, when I was National Archivist, we had these discussions, but many of the leading European countries, so to say, were against, because they want to do the work directly to the World Register, and especially they were against having a European register. I think what is needed is the joint proposals, and that is something that we have not a structure to make, so that it is, if we have cooperation like we have in the Nordic countries, then we do it. But otherwise it has been very complicated.
My name is Codruța Mihailovic. I'm from the National Archives of Romania. I would like to ask a question. I think it's a little bit specific, but because we are in this context, it's really useful to know. I know when I had to complete the form for the nomination, I had to write how many inscriptions Romania has. But when I search, and I think here I will talk with Mr. Joachim Gerlitz more directly, when I have searched for countries, Romania didn't appear, but I knew that Romania took part in an international nomination on Lord's Gospel. So if we are in a joint nomination, only the country who do the inscription is in there tagged and can be searched and appears as a result, or all the contributors, all the providers? Because in this particular case, Romania appears, has nothing in the memory of the World Register. Thank you.
Yeah, the question is, or the answer is, first of all, it seems there are some technical issues. I realize this, but I'm not the one who is dealing with those, but we will address it. And second, I would say clearly, of course, all the participating countries should appear. In which way this we can discuss, or this is nothing to discuss. It's actually again more a technical question or issue. But no, definitely. I mean, it doesn't make sense to promote joint nominations and then only one country by alphabet is the first or something like that comes up. No, exactly. No way. It seems, and maybe it's simply a technical glitch that could be also. I don't know. I will check, or we can, if you can, someone can provide me with good internet. I'm lacking for a while now. Then we can even try to double check and see.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Johan Vasara. I'm from the Sami archives, from the Norwegian side of the Sami homeland. Thank you for very interesting introductions. You were telling about the different bodies or committees established around the world for this work, and I was wondering how formally these bodies are established. Is there a certain structure they have to follow? And second, are there or has there been considered to establish any indigenous global bodies or regional bodies to promote and work with indigenous matters in this? As you might know, we are in the International Decade of Indigenous Peoples' Languages in the UN system. And in many countries, indigenous people are living under very different conditions, not to mention hostile conditions, whereas you will never get a state to promote or submit a candidature from indigenous communities, which makes it more important to have indigenous bodies in this kind of structures. And it's also about acknowledging the right to self-determination, of course. So I would like to hear something about these perspectives.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's a very interesting question. Well, first, as I said, regional and national committees have a strong level of autonomy. They can organize themselves as they like, which of course depends on the country where you live in. Sometimes a Ministry of Foreign Affairs or Ministry of Culture and Education wants to have a strong say in well, the National Commission for UNESCO and indirectly also the National Memory of the World Committee. In other countries, these committees and commissions operate quite independently from any ministry or government involvement. Secondly, they can organize themselves in the way they want. They can have as many members as they want. They can have institutional members or individual members as they want. For instance, in my country, the Netherlands, we have 5 members on the international, on the National Dutch Memory of the World Committee. 4 are institutional, National Library is represented, National Archives, Archive for Sound and Vision, and the Digital Archives. And 5 are individuals with great expertise on documentary heritage to certain aspects. And the chair of the National Committee is always one of the independent experts, never one of the institutional. That's the way how we organized, but you can organize it in any way. And you can also decide whether you want to have a national register or not, and whether you want to organize exhibitions, make publications, or whatever. It's all up to the regional or national committees within the general guidelines as are given. It has to do with, they have to deal with documentary heritage. They have to promote the preservation and access and awareness of documentary heritage. So that's I think rather clear. So far, the regional committees are, as the word says, regional. National committees are national. And there are no other committees dealing with these special things like an indigenous communities and indigenous peoples. The idea has been raised that it is not necessary to limit these kind of committees to either regional or national combinations. So it could be possible to raise a committee for indigenous peoples and their documentary heritage. I don't know where the initiative should come from, but I think it can come from every side. It can come from UNESCO bureaucracy, so to say, or it can come from individuals who say, this is an underrepresented group, and by forming a group, it will get a better voice and more impact, more influence on the program. So I think it's possible, like it would be possible to have a special committee only for archival people, or only for audiovisual archives, or something like that. If the need is there, I think it can be created. There's nothing in the guidelines that prohibits creating such a committee. So I think it's a very interesting idea, and an idea that's certainly worth to explore further. It's not easy, and people who here are representing some of these national or regional committees can confirm. It's not easy to keep it going. You depend a lot on individuals, on volunteers. It's usually a part of the activities of people who are already very busy with other things. We have seen some initiatives in the past that really depended on 1 or 2 individuals. And then when these individuals, well, retired, the whole thing collapsed. But again, I think it has been recognized recently, I remember now, by the Australian National Committee, that special attention should be given to the small island states in the Pacific and their communities like the Fiji, Solomon Islands, and so on. And there was some kind of initiative, not in the form of a large committee, but it was recognized that they need special attention. So I'd like to discuss it further with you. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe only one sentence. It sounds to me that the main problem is if this is kind of, this aspect is a bit, how to say, pushed to the side in some countries, then obviously the problem cannot be solved from a national committee. That's quite clear. So I think the idea to establish something country independent, let's say, might in this special case help, and maybe, not maybe the only, but maybe one solution to bring more attention to this. And maybe one could, or you could, or someone who is interested in this, maybe contact the Australian National Committee, Jocelyn or someone, I don't know. Roslin, yeah. And hear from them what they have already been done, or maybe what they are planning, and take some input from there.
Yes, and I remember there's also some kind of initiative from the small island development states in the Caribbean. And so there are, well, already some groups, maybe not organizations, but groups that could be interested, yes.
I could comment this. I was also engaged when we had the meeting in New York about the indigenous people. It was about 7-8 years ago. And then we have the discussions. The Sami were also present there, and that was very important. But I think that it is difficult to come in terms of a special proposal because they are so different, the conditions between the various indigenous populations. But I think that it is good to learn from each other. And what comes to the small island states, I think that it has been mainly the question about safeguarding archival heritage than making the proposals for the memory of the world, because they are endangered with the rising waters and catastrophes. So that this is mostly not on the memory of the world level.
Okay, so thank you very much for this engaging discussion, and of course, thank you to our two speakers. We can continue this discussion during the coffee break, so you can have some networking. The coffee is waiting for us outside, and as we have a little delay, but not too much, we are going to start the second session with the next speakers at 11:35. So you have more or less half an hour for the coffee, and we start again in half an hour. Thank you.
Yes, I hope you all have a nice and insightful coffee break. And now we need to begin as we are approach 11:38. Yes. So it is my great honor to introduce our next speaker, Professor Dr. Jussi Nuorteva. And Professor Nuorteva is a distinguished scholar and heritage professional from Finland with a long career in academia and cultural institutions. He served as National Archivist of Finland from 2003 to 2022 and has held key positions in research and cultural organizations. And he has also been engaged in UNESCO-related work and currently chairs the Finland National Commission for Memory of the War Programme, following his role as Vice Chair of the International Advisory Committee. So he will speak on documentary heritage of global significance, joint or own. So please join me in welcoming Professor Dr. Nuorteva.
Yes, thank you so much. So that we notice that we have all together same time. We will make it a bit faster. I will start with a question where we actually. Can you hear me now? Yes. So that I will start with where it ended, so that it is the Sami questions. And as you see from this map, the Sami people are covering the area from quite southern Sweden, Norway, Finland, and even Russian area in the Murmansk region. And the very interesting, the Sami awakening happened early. It was a young Sami woman, Elsa Laula, who noticed that the Sami are losing their position in the society. And she wrote a pamphlet of 30 pages before to be life or dead. And then it raised the questions about the Sami in the Nordic areas. And this was very important because they had a Sami gathering in Norway, in Trondheim, already in February 1917, so that it was quite early when they started with the indigenous population. And the date of the beginning of this meeting, the 6th of February, is today the Sami Day in all the Nordic countries and for all the Sami. In Finland we had the first Sami archive was built to the same seat as where we have the Sami governance building, we have the Sami parliament. The Sami have self-governance, so that they have a special position. They are not autonomous totally, but they have all legislation also, so that they have a very strong position. Here is from the opening of the Sami Parliament Sajos building, where we have also the Sami archive. And the Sami archive that we have, that is in the Memory of the World Register. And that is a very interesting, very special, and also internationally when we compare to the situation of other indigenous populations. The archive was kept in this kind of box made of a trunk of a wood, and there was a cover that was hermetically closed so that it was sliding on, and it was closed with wax so that it was waterproof. And they have the documents in a scroll. The longest scroll was 14 meters that they had. They had several of these boxes, only one is left. But the earliest document in this scroll, or the box, is from 1601. They are not written by the Sami language, but they are documents given by the Russian emperor to the Skolt Sami. The Skolt Sami are those who were living in the eastern parts, on the Russian area and the northern Finland area. And they were given to protect the rights of the Sami, and they were even used in the court. And that is why they were so important for the Sami, that they developed this kind of very original way of archiving, so that they had them in these boxes. And it was so that it's only 3 trusted men who knew the place where these were kept. And they were really something that they understood that it is important. And I can say that when we had the meeting of the indigenous populations in New York at the United Nations, then the young Sami presented this, and they said that it is so surprising to see that when the Indians from the North America came, so that, oh, we have the first documents from the about the mid-19th century, so that there's quite a difference, so that it was very early. They were kept in the village, as I mentioned, and during the time of the Second World War, they suddenly disappeared. And the reason was that when the Skolt Sami were evacuated from those areas because of the fighting that was going on the areas, it was a border guard who took them to Rovaniemi in Lapland, and they sent it further to the National Archives, but they didn't really know what it was about. And it was only in 1990s that it was detected that this is the Skolt Sami archive. And then when we were preparing for the opening of the Sami archive, it was conservative. It was never given to the National Archives. And then when we have the opening, I will go back, it was so that first I gave it back to the Skolt Sami community as a National Archivist of Finland, because it was not our property. And then they gave it further to the Sami archivist to be kept. And then they understood the importance, and then we made the discussion about proposing it to the Memory of the World Register. And it was archived there quite quickly already in 2015. And I must say that especially for the young Sami, it was very important, and also for the identity of the Sami to understand that this is something that is global heritage, very important not only for the Sami, but as a token for all other indigenous populations also. I raise up also a question of displaced archives, because that is something that is also essential when we are speaking about what is part of the memory of the world. And what is displaced archive? I think it's something that we have been very much discussing, because it's in many times it is colonial materials that have been taken from the original site to England or France or to any of the colonial states. And they would like to have them back. And in many cases it is so that it is quite easy to say if they are an entity that is clearly one entity and it has been clearly part of the indigenous population or the other population that has been under colonial rule, so that is. But in some cases it is difficult. I remember when we were talking about the Persian Gulf area, especially Emirates, and they said that they would like to have them given back to them. You know this question, so that we were talking also with Joachim about this. So that, but the problem was that the British rule was governing wider areas, so that it was not only the United Arab Emirates, today's area, but it was a wider. And then if you start to split the archive to all those who were somehow mentioned, that would be very difficult, because then the entity would be lost as an entity. So that this is something that was discussed, and we came to that it is important that we are able to digitize this kind of materials. And I think that this is one important solution also in making them known as an entity, and also important for the identity of these peoples. We do have materials like documents that are really something that could be returned, and I think that it is something that is difficult to tackle this question also. We had quite recently the survey that was done and presented by Maria Christine Betancourt, and in May 2024. But we have done this kind of work much earlier, so that it started already in 1980s, these discussions. In 1990, there was also a listing that was made, so that it was asked by the UNESCO, so that those countries who find that they have materials that are displaced so that they would make claim. And they made a list of claims. The person who has been very much working with these issues Edward Lowry, yes, Edmund Lowry. And he wrote this book, Displaced Archives, and raising up these problems also relating to the question of what is displaced. And here is one of the lists of the claims that was done, and the first list was collected by the ICA already in 1977. And you can see that there are very different materials. Greenland's claims against Denmark about materials that were taken to the Danish National Archives from Greenland, so that they would like to have them back, and many, many others. So that this is something then that was very difficult, so that we were preparing in around 2005, 2006, also to have a special committee for the displaced archives. And it was Algerian National Archivist Bonchi Fafa who was appointed to chair this, but unfortunately he died quite soon after that, so that we didn't proceed in this work. But I think that it is something that we understand that is part of the archival memory of the world. We have also unfortunate situations where we have lost archives and libraries. Here is the building of the Baghdad, the Iraqi University Library and Archive building that was also the National Library and Archive for Iraq. And it was in June 2003. I was still having New Year 2003 in Baghdad and discussing these issues. It was a very tense situation already, so that everybody was waiting for the land attack to start. And then it started in the spring, and much was destroyed, not only by the foreign troops, but also there was also inside the country very much fighting. I was there also during that time. The recommendation that was also mentioned here before is very essential, because it is telling also about what to do in the situations where we have materials that is under danger, so that it is part of the safeguarding. In the paragraph 5, we have the bullets that were added quite lately when we had these difficulties not only in Iraq, but also in Lebanon, in Syria, the Syrian war. And we had the recommendation that the member states would take holding or digital copies of the endangered materials. And at the National Archives of Finland, we did so that we started to do the work after the wars in Lebanon. There is fighting going on still today. And we were contacted by the UMAM Documentation and Research Center, where they have much of the Lebanese materials. And especially we took digital copies in Beirut, so that part of our staff was working together with our colleagues in Beirut, copying the files of the more than 70,000 people who died or disappeared in the Lebanese civil war. The center is, or was, I don't know yet, centered in the southern part of Beirut. And the headquarters of the Hezbollah was just 200 meters away, so that it is most likely that it doesn't exist. We haven't been able to get information, reliable information about what has happened to the materials in the UMAM Documentation and Research Center. But at least we do have the copies. In the last paragraph, it is also so that it is recommended that member states or the UNESCO would take also, if asked by a member state, materials in preservation when they are endangered. We noticed that this is not working quite as we had thought, because when we had the war in Syria, we were not able to take to the National Archives the materials that were copied from the governmental records in Syria, so that they were made by volunteers. Many of them died, and then smuggled out of the country. And then we are holding them now in the National Archives, and nobody knows when we are able to get them back. We have also common problems with the Holocaust that is touching many countries. And we have the very important archive that is not so well known in Germany, and that is the Arolsen archives. They have materials of more than 17 million people in the archives. They have also in the US, in the Holocaust Memory Museum, they have great collections of those effects of those who survived in the Holocaust. I will go to the Finnish 5 materials that are registered in the Memory of the World. And it tells about what kind of collections they are. Here is also the Sami village archive, but we have also a very important map collection of Adolf Erik Nordenskiöld. He was the person who sailed as the first person the Northeast Passage from around Siberia to Japan to Yokohama. And of course that is not only his journey, but it is so that he has 24,000 maps of global history, many unique maps. And that was at the National Library of Finland. This is very interesting. This is the Radziwiłł collection that was part of the heritage of the Russian Empire. It was a Radziwiłł family that was a Lithuanian-Polish family, and they had a huge and very valuable library. And, but it was split, so that it was in various libraries in the Russian Empire. The good thing was that there were lists, the records about, and there were also these ex libris marks in those volumes that have been part of the Radziwiłł library. And we made a proposal of all those countries that are holding materials from the Radziwiłł library. That was Russia, that was Poland, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, Finland. I think that it would be very difficult to do this kind of proposal anymore today in this situation. But that is something that I think it was so that we were able to work with a joint nomination, and it was successful. And I think that it is very fine to remember that we had also this very good cooperation. And I, of course, hope that the joint nominations will be helping also in this respect whenever we are making them from any region. This is quite a recent one. It was the shipping company of Gustav Eriksson archives. It is a shipping company that operates from the Åland Islands. And that was the biggest sailing fleet in the world at that time, until the time of the end of the time of the years after the Second World War. And the ships were not sailing from Åland Islands. They were by the company. And all the archives are on the Åland Islands that have also a certain autonomy. But they were sailing from South America to England, to Germany, to Europe, from Australia, wheat from Australia, and all the biggest windjammers, the very, very big sailing ships belong to the Eriksson company. And they have huge collection of materials that is at the archives of the Åland Islands, but also in the Maritime Museum, and that is very unique collection. And we were very happy that it was also adopted to the Memory of the World Register, and the Åland Islands celebrated it with a stamp also, so that they had stamps be published about this access to the Memory of the World Register. They have a right to have their own stamps also, so that they have not only in Finland, but they have own Åland Island stamps. This is also interesting. It was Edward Westermark's archive. Edward Westermark was a Finnish researcher who was doing research on the marriage in Morocco. And he was living with the local people. Many of them were educated. With him, he's sitting with a hat here, and we have Sheriff Al-Bakali sitting with the black hat with him, and he was very multilingual. He made also a trip to Finland. He had been working with the publications of Westermarck, also mentioned as the co-author there, and he was speaking not only Arabic and Berber languages, but also French, Spanish, English, so that then when he came to Finland, he was awarded the Medal of the White Rose of Finland and also the Economic Society of Finland, so that he was really respected also in Finland for the cooperation. And then we have, on the other side is sitting very interesting person, and that is the leader of the Rifi revolutionary movement, Abdel Krim, very well-known person in Moroccan history. And the Time magazine wanted to interview him, but they did not find him. But when they knew that he was a friend of Edward Westermarck, and Edward Westermarck organized so that they were able to make this interview, and he was also in the cover of the Time magazine. That is really something. The first person from Morocco, and I think that nobody else after that else has been in the cover of the Time magazine. Edward Westermarck was very well-known sociologist, so that he became professor of the London School of Economics. That was the first professorship for sociology at the London School of Economics, and one of his students was Bronislaw Malinowski, a world-famous sociologist. And the materials are kept in the Åbo Academy, Swedish-speaking university library, where Westermarck later on became rector. So that is very interesting material also with the correspondence and the materials on the Berber languages. Also Westermarck was fluently speaking both Berber languages and Arabic. I think that it is also good to mention, as was already mentioned, the work that has been done and going on with the Galilei Foundation, because their intention is to digitize all the materials that are in the memory of the bird register. And I think this is very good also in making them available in digital form, so that it is systematic work that they are doing. So that we know that it is not only making the register, but when we are making the proposals for the register, we must understand the documentary heritage quite widely. Then we understand what is something that really are filling the criteria of the memory of the world, that are very crucial also for the work of Joachim and Jan in their own capacities in the memory of the world register subcommittee and as chair of the International Advisory Committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Noruteba, for your insightful presentation and contribution to the Memory of the World program. And it is my pleasure to introduce our final speaker, Ms. Stagnia Bartina. And Ms. Bartina is the director of the National Library of Latvia and a recognized expert in cultural heritage. She has held key leadership positions, including Secretary General of Latvian National Commission for UNESCO and Vice President of the UNESCO Executive Board. So her work brings together policy, research, and practice in the field of documented heritage, offering valuable insights into institutional and national approaches. She will present on institutional and national level perspectives on MoW nominations, including joint nomination, focusing on a case study of Latvia. And please join me in welcoming Ms. Stagnia Bartina.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning. I want to thank all the Spanish authorities. I want to thank very much the International Center for Documentary Heritage of South Korea, as well as our archival colleagues for organizing this event, and it's my great honor to address you here. Without much ado, I would like to just go into the story of our case study. Looking actually into this past, I actually remember that I have been also part of the Documentary Heritage and Memory of the World program since at least 2001, when I started as a very, very small associate and activist and volunteer at the National Commission for UNESCO. Because indeed, since Latvia joined UNESCO in 1991, and then the creation of the Memory of the World program in 1992, we have been present in it since the very establishment of it. And it was the former director of the National Library, Anders Wilks, who immediately joined the Memory of the World community, and thus also was the best bridge we could have had in our country to bring back the knowledge and awareness of the documentary heritage. Hence, if we look back and trace back, we can really talk about the last, let's say, almost 36 years as the process how documentary heritage as a discipline evolves in Latvia. So we get the first nomination in 2001 when we nominate our Cabinet of Folk Songs, which is the biggest collection of folk songs recorded at the end of the 19th century. It's actually a cupboard, a cabinet with small strips of pieces of paper. Then it is being followed when we start developing, initiate nomination of the Baltic Way. So in 1989, the Baltic Way took place, uniting together all three Baltic states, condemning the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 1939, August 23rd. And we named it already by then, and that's why I'm putting it out, the Baltic Way, human chain linking three states and their drive for freedom, by Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and then it was inscribed. This served as a great impetus and a stimulus to also work further in Latvia on the documentary heritage. And then I was already the Secretary General, and together with Anders Wilks, we created the National Register for the Memory of the World. And also putting together various approaches of how we can actually reach the bottom-up approach and ask for things we don't see from the capital perspective. We organized 7 in-situ seminars in regional archives and local museums about documentary heritage. We put down that there will be new inscriptions on the National Register every 4 years, and we got 3 new nominations in the first call, which actually all 3 of them were very unique perspectives on history. But I'm going to follow just one of them. And the first idea was that a proposal came from the director of Tukums Museum, which is a very small museum outside Riga. And just to give you a little bit of a background story of this. So the history of the Baltic is complicated. In June 1940, the Soviet Union occupied the Baltic states. And this was followed by a series of mass repressions over the next coming 50 years. In 1941 and 1949 were the 2 greatest mass deportations that took place in order to relocate large numbers of population and also to relocate large numbers of population back into the Baltics, which created immediately a lot of tension, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt. Families often were deprived of their property, divided with very little belongings. Often they were either relocated with various restrictions, like without ability to move away, but also with a restriction to correspondence. They were often not allowed to write letters, even often to have material to write on. So while many people died in these atrocities and series of atrocities, many people also survived, continued their lives in deportation, created new families, children were born, also memories and heritage was transmitted over the generation. And then most people also returned back to Latvia after the death of Stalin in 1953. Yet the deportations had left a very painful wound in the memory of Latvians and also the other Baltics. And during the Soviet occupation, this part of the history was little spoken of. It was part of taboo. And it was also related to a lot of shame of people who had been deported. But also it was linked to shame of the people who had remained in Latvia. So there was a lot of hurt on all the sides of people involved. Often deportees were positioned as enemies of the state, and they all had criminal record in their resumes. They were often deprived to study, return to their homes, occupy certain professions, live in large cities, etc. And thus also their stories and experiences often remained untold. And talking about Siberian deportations was indeed perceived as a taboo topic, and it was still inspiring terror up until 1980s. People simply did not talk because it was always linked that you might be caught on some connection that might bring you to Siberia as a consequence. And there was a lot of fear about it. So nobody really talked about it or brought it up. But then in 1991, Latvia and the other Baltic states regained its independence, and suddenly these memories started to surface. Suddenly something started to happen. And in 1989 already the first letters written on birch bark appeared at the Museum of Tukums. So, and at the same time, in 2009, when we proposed a call for the National Memory of the World Register, it's felt that everything has been said about the occupation, because there were multiple remembrance days established. There were more than 400 memorial sculptures and plaques put out. There were many autobiographical reflections recorded and also published. There was a Museum of Occupation of Latvia and Estonia and Lithuania founded and opened. Governments had initiated various research projects to collect, research, and analyze every available Soviet directive document related to deportation facts, and collect and list every person and every name we could find. So many previously repressed people were able now to return their initial homes, namely to privatize and get back their initial properties, as well as they were given compensations for the suffering during the occupations. So we have to say that the newly re-established states rushed to show compassion by giving people monthly pensions and various allowances, by showing remorse and showing some kind of empathy. But what was missing, and this is where the letters would come in, it was that it was often addressed as a collective memory, except and those individual stories were not much followed up. And I have to say the individual agency and what it meant on an individual level to be part of repressed persons group was not that much addressed. Hence, when in 2009, Agrit Ozol, and she is the director of Tukums Museum, which I mentioned, the director responded to our call for national nominations, she brought up this idea of creating a collection of letters written on birch bark in Siberia. And unintentionally, she became the change agent and a trigger point for many unbelievable things that followed, including the international nomination. Her initiative was through creating a collection to tell the story of individuals behind the deportations, and that the letters on birch bark demonstrate that these people were no objects of the regime and also are no objects of this large collective memory, but subjects who were able to stand up for themselves and had their own agency. So this nomination and call for national memory of the world nomination was the needed window of opportunity that Agrit Ozol saw and took it. So what was the proposal? The proposal itself was a game changer. So while not perfectly well worded at first, and I have to say it has been sharpened up over these almost now 17 years, but it was very much nailing the significance of these letters written on birch bark. It was highlighting the act of writing, reminding of humanity, unbreakable spirit of the people, and as well as the strength of the self. These letters of Siberia, and I will show you some examples as we will walk through the presentation, all carry a very simple message. Hang on, don't give up, and return home. And these letters thus prove that when prisoners wrote texts, that was an exercise of that spirit, so that they could maintain their spiritual balance and will to survive. And that is very fascinating, because in these letters we never, almost never, and I have to say never, except one letter, I think, which accounts a food ratio. But we never face anybody complaining. They're just letters of pure love, care, and wish to live, and dreams of home. They're not about complaints. And thus we could identify 5 reasons why people were writing, even if on the birch bark, because that often was the only means that they could use to write. And the reasons were writing to survive, writing to remember, writing to preserve hope, writing to maintain the spirit of resistance, writing for unity, writing to maintain the self, and writing as a means of love. And birch bark, as I mentioned, was often used as this very significant material because, you know, birch bark is not the most usual carrier you would find in the 20th century history. That is very unique. But again, it has to do with the fact that a lot of people were that were placed in areas and working on various forestry works with a lot of birch trees. So they did have an access to the birch bark, which was often also used as food. As you know, if you peel it off, there's this soft white part of the birch bark that you can eat, but then the peel remains as a sheet of paper. So they were using actually, and there's another layer of significance of the birch bark because the Baltic countries are rich with birch trees. So our landscape integrity and memory contains with the birch tree forests with a white, black trunk verticals across the landscape. So it has also a very strong connection to the feeling of home. But of course, thus, these letters are very fragile, very unique, very few. The strategic challenges we faced were that when in 2009 Agrita Ozol proposed this nomination and to focus on these seemingly insignificant letters in birch bark, insignificant I have to say because they were often overlooked by historians, telling that you know, they don't contain that much of informational value. Well, they don't. They contain often quotations of poems, greetings for holidays and birthdays, messages of love, asking about other people, sharing how they remember others. And I have to say, she firstly felt and was facing amazement from the side of the fellow museums of Latvia. While the museums actually did not oppose the idea for such a nomination, they were silently perplexed because from their perspective, there were already enough shared resources to make sense of the past. As I mentioned, the Museum of Occupation, the working group by the President on the occupations. There were so many other, the Faculty of History working on this. There were so many other stakeholders as well, National Archives doing their job on registering the people. So there was a sense of question, why us? But what her initiative was, she actually provided a new resource for people to make sense of the past, which was often truly disruptive. Also, I have to mention that Tukums Museum, when she offered this nomination, was in no position close in having any kind of power or authority role in creating the memory of the Soviet Union. It was just, they were out of, it was the Museum of Occupation, as I mentioned, the row of other stakeholders which had the authority. Tukums Museum was just as a museum with a unique collection, with these new unique letters, and only a few of them at that time. So collective memory about this was being already constructed and done by others and somebody else. And thus Agrita Ozol from Tukums was doing something very incredible. She was inviting other small museums to unite, look through their collections if they also had these letters written on birch bark, and create a new layer of memory altogether. So the challenges were to collect and create a collection of letters and identify, as it was mentioned by previous speakers, to identify these very unique letters written on birch bark in Siberia, scattered in diversity of institutions around Latvia, often many of them in very small provincial museums, just by somebody smuggled in. People didn't want to highlight this kind of gifting to museums. It was just something, oh, I had this, maybe you would be interested. And they were very, actually also there are many, they're also very rare because people didn't want to keep them at home because that would associate that somebody from Siberia was writing to them. So that goes back to the idea of shame. So these are extremely unique testimonies. But we needed to collect them in order to prove and make the case. Then the second challenge was to extend this new layer of the collective memory to broader groups beyond also the first level on our national level and then beyond national level, and also to mobilize the Baltics. And then it was to search for recognition from the side of perpetrators and collaborators in Latvian society, just to give a little bit of different angle how we can look on this fact of repressions and atrocities during the Soviet occupation, and to start process of acknowledging of this past pain, firstly, that it actually took place and that it caused harm, and also search for an apology. So in numbers, this is one of the examples you will see. It's written from, 1950s. And it's just a small poem written about the sentiment towards home. During the cult of Stalinism, so in the first 1940 to 1953, it is about 167,000 people from Latvia alone that were repressed, including also thousands of children who were sent to Siberia. And on the first wave in 2009, we only could identify 19 letters, which we think from hundreds of more that could have existed, because when we talked to reportees, they identified that there were much more letters that existed, but there are very few of them preserved. And one really, as you also see from this very small example, one cannot hide away from the very strong emotional impact it leaves to you. And thus we came up with an idea of a joint nomination. And this was really an idea when we started to negotiate our own terms to broaden our own national collection. So in 2009, the first 19 letters in birch bark came in. In 2013, we renewed the National Register. A new layer of letters were already identified. Not that many, though, but still more than that. And this was the moment where we also came in with an idea of the UNESCO nomination. And here I have to give you a hint. It is because of the previous nomination, and I mentioned already the Baltic Way, and it's not only that it's something that we dared to think of, that our messages and missives might play a broader role, but I think because we did have a very clear agenda on this nomination. And this agenda was also about the Baltic, strengthening the Baltic community and cooperation. This is also what we saw in the Baltic Way. It was only both of acknowledging the fact of this Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, but it was also, and more importantly, highlighting the power of the Baltics and that we can mobilize and we can stand up peacefully for ourselves. It was like a huge flash mob, to say it contemporarily, in 1989. And now again, these letters and the collection of the Siberian letters allowed us to talk about our past and the Balticness in a very different category. So we wanted to pursue strengthening the sisterhood of the Baltics, and it was very clear also for our internal moral compass, as from Latvia, as we initiated this, that we wanted to pursue a serial nomination, and international nomination was not title itself. It was about the Baltic agenda and the Baltic unity. And it's actually curiously that this year, 2026, marks the 80th anniversary since the establishment of the Baltic University in the deported persons camp in Germany in 1946, which actually within itself is a very unique historical fact, that in the deported persons camp in Germany, a Baltic university by 3 Baltic states uniting was created under the not under the military UK military powers, and these letters happen at the same time. So the Baltics unite both there in the West, so-called, and also under the very hostile situation under the Soviet occupation. So what we did for mobilizing the Baltics, we firstly started to talk about this as a case study from Latvian side, firstly as the national establishment of the National Register of the Memory of the World and how the process works. And I think you two remember we even presented this in the 2012 in the Polish event, and how the National Register actually can fuel a lot of very high quality international nominations and national nominations. We also worked on several publications as well as exhibitions, always paying attention to languages. So we always made sure that these exhibitions were in Latvian, Russian, English, and French. So that was also a very important aspect for success, I think, but not that big of a success. Then in 2014, we put forward a proposal for creating a mutual nomination to our Ministers of Culture, which then followed by first meeting also on the Latvian ground. We initiated it and we brought forward And also it was reached by response by the Lithuanian National Memory of the World Collection Register, these letters also inscribed on the Lithuanian National Register. Estonians don't have the National Register. And then in 2016, we hosted at the National Library of Latvia. I was not then part of the National Library, but I was convening, leaving UNESCO and joining the National Library. We organized a large exhibition with the title, I Cannot Not Write. So what was the summary of the nomination? The summary, I think, was about formulating arguments for an international nomination. And this is something which took a lot of time. So what would be the storyline, the wording, the narrative, the nailing of the formula, possibly for the winning formula of the nomination. So instead of actually playing the suffering card and enroll into the competition of suffering, we decided, and from the Latvian side, we very heavily worked on that we could now build on the shared spirit of humans who demonstrate incredible strength and humanity under most inhumane circumstances. That's why we named it, that the collection testifies to the strength of the human spirit that continued to demonstrate by acts of writing independent thought, love of life and care for dear ones, even in fierce conditions brought about by repressions and deprivation of human rights. We worked through these individual voices to give back agency to people who suffered the Soviet repressions, but we didn't talk about the suffering at all. The nomination was cleared for these connotations because we didn't want to. That was not, in general, our sentiment in that. Our sentiment was all on the power of humanity within these people, despite the atrocities. But yet, so we submitted in 2016 the first joint nomination. It was called the Baltic Collection of Letters Written on Birch Bark in Siberia from 1941 until 1965. It then contained 103 documentary heritage objects or items from various Soviet labor camps, prisons, and forced relocation settlements. It was jointly presented by 21 memory institutions of the Baltic states, and next to the museums of occupation, all the institutions actually are smaller provincial museums. The museums of occupation of 3 Baltic states are the biggest in a way, the leading, but they're not the leading institutions. They would be the ones represented in the capitals, but the rest of 21 memory institutions are scattered all around the countries. And then again, it demonstrates the relevance of the act of writing and explains the tragic course of life of many people subjected to the repressions of the Soviet Union. What happened? The revision was requested for a more neutral language. We had worked greatly on the neutrality of the language, but already then the contestation was received by one country asking for neutralization of the language. And then the nomination was not inscribed as was presented, not because of the argument not inscribed. So we didn't get a no, but we get a conclusion that the collection submitted was restricted in scope since it presented only a limited number of countries and one particular type of documents. This particular type of documents, birch bark as a very unique carrier, was our argument actually. So we could not bring all the rest of the paper documents in because that was not our point, because the birch bark also convened many other layers of messages. As a result, it felt that the international significance of the nomination was not adequately demonstrated. We were shocked, and it did hurt. Because we thought we had brought so many layers of actually a contribution to the Memory of the World Register with so much love, compassion, and actually an idea of how to walk forward the path where the past is so painful. But of course, we could not. We could not. And then, of course, we gathered back again, and what the Baltics do, they start everything again. So we reached an agreement among the Baltics to revise, expand, and resubmit the nomination. And then, in 2021, the new operation, it's not the Operation Bloodlines, I put it wrongly, of the Memory of the World Programme were adopted clarifying how other countries can contest a nomination. But here I have to come in with something, I think, which came into as a great awareness for us. And it was the question of how we recognize guilt and responsibility, and how we basically give back the work to the perpetrators for them to take ownership of the crimes. And I think that was still underlining the nomination. While we were focusing on the strength of the people who wrote the letters, I think this does bring up the whole other perspective of who did it. Because while we did not put any wording about the atrocities by the Soviet, and this nomination, I have to clearly say, because we were washing it out of any kind of references of blaming, of naming, of calling out, of shaming, or in general, we wanted to take away limelight from the perpetrators and give it to the people who wrote letters. I think it did created the work towards a needed recognition of Soviet atrocities, acknowledgement of them, and harm they created, and to name it. But we didn't do it, and we are still not doing it, actually. Not on this nomination, we do that, but not in this nomination. So, as the protagonists of these letters were individuals, also the guilt of the perpetrators has to be individualized. And if the victims were no anonymous mass and had their agency, then also the perpetrators were real persons and shall be held accountable. And also from our side, and also with this nomination, the perpetrators in any of the previous exhibitions, conferences, publications, and even popular novels almost did not exist, as if we were punishing them for fading them from the history and raising them. But again, what we wanted to recognize them, and we always looked at the perpetrators as morally higher, from the higher grounds, that we don't do this. We survive in a different way. We never engage in this. So there's a lot of coding going on around it, and a lot of conversation, and a lot of loaded emotions. But again, the next steps went on. I just wanted to have this slip in as the process of thinking of what we go through as the first objection comes in. But what we did, we continued to pursue a new nomination, a new joint nomination, and again we convened a meeting at the National Library. We also reached actually out to Russia, because we know the memorial had these letters, and they had also organized an exhibition on the right to correspondence. So they had been looking into the act of writing as well, and we wanted to reach out to them. But of course, since 2022, we have no contact, and as you know, the memorial is dismantled. It doesn't exist. So we don't know what happened to anything of it. But of course, we decided to invite Poland, Ukraine, and Finland to the nomination. Finland, I think, didn't identify any of the letters. At least we couldn't find out. You didn't identify, yeah. But Poland and Ukraine did come back with certain identified letters written on birch bark. So in 2022 and 23, we worked again on revising the text, and in 23, the nomination was resubmitted. So what was resubmitted? Letters on birch bark from the Gulag. So there was a huge discussion, of course, about the wording and everything, and I can lengthy talk about this, how this works or not. But again, you need to work in consensus for these kind of things and be very careful and give everyone a space. But again, and imagine count, it's about 14 years of work, and we started with 19 letters, and now we only have 148 known letters. So they're extremely rare and fragile, which we could identify in the 5 nominating countries from now 31 memory institutions. And the argument was put that they are created on the very unique primary source of a material, birch bark, and the manuscripts are a unique primary source of information contemporary to the tragic events they concern, forming a truly communicative collection. And I'm just giving you a different sounding of the wording, because this is the wording on the new nomination. And the collection serves as a token for remembering all human tragedies under totalitarian regimes, and acknowledges the mental strength of the people who confronted and withstood such repressions. To give you a little bit of work which we also carried out, because I was a lot of times writing these nominations, most of the times. And I was also doing the comparative analysis. And to just draw you parallels, where we looked for parallels, for example, we found and analyzed, and I analyzed these letters, for example, from the 1979 Iranian Revolution and the letters written from the prisons of Iranian, also terror, basically. And these letters also are no letters of complaints, they're letters of love. They don't waste this limited space of piece of whatever they get to write on to complain. They send love. And the same goes for the other parallel we draw was the first letters by African slaves in the US, the ones who first learned to write, and they often hide the skill that they can write, but they do write. And again, they write letters of love. They don't complain, you don't waste it for that. And I think these are also very significant parallels which we could draw and bring up. But just to show you some birchbark letters, so we had letters from Estonia, and this is from 1944, and you can see how both sides of the birchbark is used. They sometimes did have pencils, but often they had to create ink by various plant juices. This is one of the letters written from Latvia, from a Jewish deportee, and you can see how it's being folded and then sent. Either it was put in an envelope or just sent it like that. You can also see that a lot of these envelopes, this is an example from Lithuania, and you can see that they were used as actual postcards. You cannot now send a birchbark letter. It will be removed from the post office. It just would not be acceptable. But here you actually send a physical piece of a birchbark by post. And we also have examples with censorship mark, we have with certain cutouts, we have stamps, we have stamps like postal stamps, and like allowances that allow it to be passed. Often they are in all different languages, so they were often, you had to write in Russian for the censoring authorities to be able to read your letter. So they are not always in Latvian, Lithuanian, Estonian, Ukrainian, or Polish. They are often also in Russian. There were also letters as books. This is a prayer book from Poland as an example how it was used. So the leaves, so you can also see different kind of ways to convey the message. And also they are being created as a small book. And this is a small book of Pamiatnik, which is a small memory album, where people just write short memories and put down. But of course, what happened was in summer 2024, we received a contestation of the nomination from Russian Federation on the grounds of hate speech. What followed was openly hostile correspondence from Russian side denying that we did respond to that, saying that it's actually what you presented, what is the aims of the program also, that there are no good or bad memories, and this is really about the humane nature, and it just didn't fall. And we actually got back a very, very hostile correspondence from Russian side denying the fact of the occupation of the Baltic states, which was clearly there, opposing certain personalities or as the authors of the messages, which again, as an example of Karl Marx, we don't talk about the personalities of these people, we talk about the different significance. And also all the atrocities carried out. So also Russian Federation in their response letter openly threatened the Memory of the World program about the risks if not obeying to the Russian contestation. So in the second nomination, and again, we received that the nomination is not being inscribed in the international register. To conclude, I want to bring back why it all matters, still matters, because we're not giving up and we most likely will resubmit and just sharpen it again. But there was something that we have to pull together as strings. As we started, in a way, as it was proposed by Agreta Oswald, she was really the agent of change. And I like to also give her the limelight, and also it was thanks to the Andris Vilks, who really saw it and said, no, go forward with this. We have to talk about ripple effects. And while we were just at first offering interpretation of this dreadful past, it was actually more about searching for I don't know, threads and ideas of how that reveal the strength and humanity of the survivors and not elaborate the cruelty of the Soviets. So we wanted really to take back and say, no, we are very strong. We know how to do this. So, and museologically, we can walk through why it was important that Agret Wozel was coming from a museum and proposing it from a museological perspective, because she, as a museologist, had a different narrative to tell. So she looked differently. She looked from a different perspective. And this is where the question came in. If until then, the whole narrative and historical research focused around the idea, never again, this whole nomination brought up the light and said, well, how to survive if it happens again. And these letters and this nomination actually is a response to that. There is a way, and there always will be a way to survive. So that's basically the path we walked through. And here I also want to give some kind of a hope to all the nominations. Instead of dealing with atrocities done to the victims and people who suffered, so we don't give limelight to the perpetrators, but it's very important to engage with the resilience and strength of the survivors and of the people who are there while being drawn into the future. And this, how to survive if again, is something which gives us, for the present day, more strength than the simple never again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dagnia and Jussi, for these super interesting presentations. Jussi started with this shared archival heritage with the example of the Sami archives. Dagnia presented this extremely interesting use case about how a nomination that is also international can be contested and what is the future for these kind of nominations. So I think we have enough content for having around 10 minutes of questions and answers. So my colleagues are here in the case you want the microphone.
May I comment the question when you raised up that you contacted Finland and we didn't have any? That is true. We don't have, because we had, when we made separate peace in September 1944, from those areas that were left to Russia or Soviet Union at that time, we had more than 500,000 people who were evacuated. Practically no one stayed there. We had people from the Russian or Soviet Karelia that were taken, they were Finnish speaking, but we don't know because we don't have any access to the materials they might have had. We have had cooperation with Memorial also on these issues about the Karelian and the Finnish speaking people, and we yes, we have, yes.
Okay. Thank you for this presentation. I found it super interesting. And during your presentation, I also started to look after, because 700,000 Hungarians were taken to the Soviet Gupvi camps, whether we have something to add to this collection. So this was my first thing. And the second thought was that going back to EURBICA role into this memory of the World Programme and how we can contribute or participate, I still see relevance to have some, at least not so institutionalized, but at least some kind of program to have to show the relevance, the European relevance of the documents what we have in our collection, because it's also a big danger that we have something which belongs very strongly to the memory of our nations or communities, and then of course Russia will be contested it, and at international level you cannot reach what you wanted and you deserve based on this cultural mission. So I think something, and this is the third thought what I would like to share with you, because in Barcelona, in the ICA Congress last year, we had also a meeting of the EURBICA, and then we announced that we will have European awards. And we made this structure, which will be announced in a couple of days, I think. And one of the awards is the collection or record of the year. So I encourage you to submit your collection to this.
Thank you very much, but I have to just respond. But I think it's a longer discussion we should convene in a coffee break and dinner maybe. But I'm also part of the IFLA European regional group. And I have been also thinking of how to bring the documentary heritage more on the IFLA level. But IFLA is more on the public libraries. So I think for archives it's a little bit easier. But let's see. But I think there should be a better ground also to bring into these institutions the documentary heritage narrative and perspective and discipline. And I can just, I know that the Brandenburgische Technische Universität, they have the Anka Prodan. She is a very good expert and also a very good source. So there are many also younger generation coming in also from the academical perspective. So let's see how we go with that. And I know that there was a documentary heritage network established by the Critical Heritage Studies just now, literally within the last 2 weeks. Anka sent a message. So there is a growing also academic debate and polishing and also integrating of other fields like archivists and mobilizing and librarians better. So I would be very happy. And as for the Hungarian deputies, I think we'll definitely reach out to you. We would love for you to have a look if you have it. We didn't manage because we wanted to have it in a more regional, but I think you're correct. There are many people, and I know that there was also we identified in Austria, there were Birchbach letters, but they were from the, I think also from the Second World War or the First World War, but they were not from the Soviet camps. But there were some examples. So in a way, there was some kind of idea that when you have nothing to write on, you have some kind of memory, or I don't know, previous memory that you could always use this, which was not used as a matter of carrier for centuries, and then suddenly it just pops up. And I have to go back to what you mentioned, to the Martin Luther influence. We also, when we analyze it, but again, it's a parallel story which we have also analyzed at the National Library, there is a great parallel to the act of writing and to the significance and phenomenon of a book and writing for the nation. So it does pop up as a parallel way to continue existing even under any kind of restrictions. And that's why the Baltic University comes in, that's why the act of writing comes in as an act of still surviving.
Thank you. Let me stand. Thank you, Dagnia, for your impressive contribution for your speech. Maybe it's useful to give a little bit of a formal background to contested nominations and the process that we've gone through in the program regarding these contested nominations. And it's only to give this background, not to say anything negative about your presentation. Let me be clear, because I think these Birchbach letters should be inscribed on the International Register. I told you that the Memory of the World program was growing and getting more, and flourishing, getting more attention. First, it was a rather small program in the margin of UNESCO, led by experts. But then it got more attention and more exposure. And from that moment on, politicians and diplomats started to look at it. And not only sometimes from their own interest, but sometimes with an only perspective. How can it be used for the interest of my nation, my country? And in that context, it became clear to some countries that sometimes documents say bad things about these countries, that they highlight dark pages in their history, or that they give a perspective on their history that they don't like. So when these diplomats and politicians started to give attention, they also started to contest certain nominations. Only a very few, let's say 2 or 3% of the total number of submitted nominations. And the most clear example, except for the Birchbark letters, were the documents regarding the comfort women that were presented by South Korea in 2015 already, and then again in 2017. It resulted in a crisis, I must say, in the memory of the World Programme. And some countries refused to contribute their financial contributions to UNESCO if certain nominations would be inscribed. And that caused for a real crisis in UNESCO. It meant that 20% of their income would disappear if certain nominations would be inscribed. Very political action, of course. And that threatened UNESCO, and it threatens in particular the memory of the World Programme. Well, after a lot of fuss, it was decided to come to a revision of the program, a comprehensive review of the program. And there was a stop on for the cycle of the International Register for 4 years. And for quite some time, it was threatening. And I really personally feared that the program would never start working again, or that at least the International Register and the other registers would stop. In the end, there was found some kind of solution. And if you look at the general guidelines at the moment, they're very short. They used to be much longer. They're very short. I think it's only, let's say, 23 pages. And half of it is devoted to the issue of contested nominations. It's absurd, in fact. But they had to find a solution. The solution is that there is a new step in the procedure of the assessment of nominations. That step is that nominations can be contested by other parties. As soon as they have been declared admissible by the Register Subcommittee, they're on the Memory of the World platform, and they can be contested or they can be commented in any way by any other third party. And these contestations have to be taken into account and taken very seriously. I told you that one of the things that we are working on at the moment is the procedure of how to deal with contested nominations. Because in the present situation, a contestation can take forever. The idea is, and that's an ideal as well, is that the contesting party and the nominator get together, and that after, sometimes with a mediator, after that they come to some kind of agreement, some kind of formulation that is acceptable both to the nominator and to the contesting party. In practice, of course, that's not always easy. You said the Russians didn't want to react, they responded very aggressively, and they didn't want to go into that kind of conversation. And we've seen it in other cases as well. So here's our problem at the moment, that any contesting partner, any contesting party can in fact prolong and frustrate the process of getting together and starting working together to a new nomination or a new formulation of the nominated materials forever. Well, one of the things that is being discussed very intensively in the International Advisory Committee and other gremia in the Memory of the World Programme is how to deal with that. And I'm very sorry to hear that it was not successful in the finals in the last cycle. But we are really working on that, trying to take examples from other heritage programs. For instance, in the World Heritage Convention, if you want to nominate something and it is being contested, then only 4 years of contestation and mediation and discussion are possible, and then it has to be submitted again and well, the decisive body has to make a decision. We could apply the same in the Member of the World Programme, but it's not in the guidelines at the moment. So again, it's only 2 or 3%, and I'm very happy that, let's say, 95, 98% of all nominations is not being contested. Or if there is some kind of comment, it is solved and the nomination goes through the whole process. So the far majority is doing well, and I'm very glad that the program is running again. Nevertheless, it's immensely frustrating if something like this is happening, and we're working on that. That's just as a bit of historical and political background. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very interesting presentations. First of all, I was interested, you mentioned that your first nomination was declined basically on the basis that only a limited number of countries and only one type of documents was presented. I'm curious, what was the reason for the second cancellation, or rather refusal? And I wish you every success on your third nomination, of course. But the other thing is, you mentioned that they were registered on your national registers in Latvia and Lithuania. And I was wondering what happens when, hopefully, it will be inscribed in the international register. Do they stay together in the national and in the international? Or do they have to be excluded from the national? What happens with this, if anyone has any insight on this? Thank you.
So Jan already responded to what happened the second nomination. The procedure was changed, and that is why we ended up in this Möbius way of contestations.
Oh, it's still contested then?
Well, if a country contests, there is basically a no way out.
Right, so it's like...
So basically a contested is perceived as an objection with no way to negotiate. We can write back our position, we can improve, but if the country still maintains an objection, that's endless. That's what we are currently on the Möbius way of endless negotiation. So as for the factuality, it never reached the International Advisory Council. So it was stuck on the level of register subcommittee. So it actually was never even brought forward. So we would have never seen it. So we didn't even know it. The international experts didn't even know it existed in a way, because it was already blocked on the subcommittee level. Yeah. And the second question was what happens. So for our perspective, we would consider, to be very frank, for the UNESCO World Heritage, if you are accepted to the International Memory of the World, World Heritage Register, you get out of the tentative list. And there's a certain threshold that you have to submit from the tentative list. The National Memory of the World Register's purpose is not to create international nominations. That is not the way. Tentative lists for the World Heritage are created in order to filter nominations that would go forward for the World Heritage nomination. For the Memory of the World, that's not the case. The case is to mobilize people around safeguarding, preserving, communicating documentary heritage. So for our case, but it could be very individual, as it was responded previously, it's done on a very individual ways, how each country organized their national register. Because as I mentioned, Estonia doesn't have a national register at all. They just nominate it. So it's not compulsory. So I think in our case, we haven't written it down that they would immediately lose the national register status. So I think they would remain on both levels. So that's as far as for the current regulation for our case. And this regulation, so the national register is being established under the National Commission for UNESCO, and it's one of the National Commission programs. And it's one of so the legal documentation is done by the National Commission for UNESCO in Latvia. So that's the legal level.
Thank you.
I could comment this question so that we didn't have this contested system, but we had it so that it came up when we had discussions and debates about the comfort women issue and the Nanjing massacre issue. And Japan reacted very strongly to these proposals. but it didn't have the possibility to have it contested in the way that it would be withdrawn. And I participated in the discussions, and China, that had been also with in the would have contested it or proposed it, but then for some reason that I don't know, they withdraw their proposal of the launching, and then the comfort women. Japan had about 10%, so the EU or the UNESCO budget came from Japan, and that was very difficult discussions. And finally, Korea also withdrew, as Japan had paid compensation for the persons who had been the comfort women who were still alive. So that it was solved in that sense that it didn't come to the register, but it was done in another way, so that it was a settlement that was approved also by the comfort women who were still alive at that time. But it was very difficult, and it was very close that Japan would have withdrawn from the UNESCO. So that is, I must say that we were very happy at the UNESCO when we were able to have this solution. I had the honor to inform it to the media, and that was more than 40 TV channels at the UNESCO building waiting for the decision. And but then we had this, so that we have to do this in another way, so that it don't lead to open contracts between the countries, and then we had the contested, and that means that it is withdrawn because of some country finds that it is a political, and of course it is very subjective question whether it is political or not. But that is also the case when we are speaking about your proposal, so that when if some country finds that it is a political, then they will contest it.
Thank you very much, Jussi and Dagnia, for your presentations and for sharing with us. And now we are concluding the workshop, and I would like to invite again the authorities back to the stage for the closing session. So Christian Anita, President of the EURBICA, and Jung Jong Cho, General Secretariat of the ICDH. And thank you very much, all of you, for your presence. So please, Christian and reception.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today's discussion have provide invaluable insight into the Memory of the World program and the importance of nominations. It will be very meaningful to share diverse experience and explore opportunity for the cooperation for next sessions. We hope that this effort will continue to grow and strengthen collaboration among the institutions. ICDH will continue to support this effort and promote the value of documentary heritage through international cooperations. Thank you very much for your participation.
Okay, so the final word is mine. Okay, I will be short, and as we close this opening session, I would like to thank all of you for being here today, and also for our colleagues online on Facebook for joining this workshop. It's a pleasure to welcome such a distinguished group of colleagues and to begin these days of exchange in the spirit of cooperation that the Memory of the World program inspires. So this morning has reminded us that the documentary heritage is not only something we preserve, but something we share. The presentations and reflections we have heard have shown how valuable it is to look at heritage through a collaborative lens, especially when we are considering joint nominations that reflects connections across borders, institutions, and historical experiences. And for EURBICA, this is especially meaningful. We believe that cooperation is not simply a practical tool. I think it's part of the very identity of our archival community. Many of these documents that matter most of our shared history were created in contexts that transcend national boundaries, and they deserve to be approached in the same spirit. As president of EURBICA, I have seen firsthand how these partnerships not only strengthen individual institutions, but also enrich our collective understanding of Europe's past. I would like to thank again our host in Spain, our partners from International Center for Documentary Heritage, and all the speakers who have helped launch this workshop so strongly. Your contributions have set the right tone for the days ahead, thoughtful, open, and ambitious. A special thanks also to the experts who have traveled from afar to share their insights with us today. We now look forward to the next sessions with great interest. Over the coming days, I'm confident that the discussions will deepen on our understanding, strengthen our partnership, and help transform ideas into future nominations. That is what makes this workshop important. Not only the knowledge shared today, but the collaboration that will continue behind it. The nominations we find here have the potential to bring new attention to Europe's shared documentary treasure. In the end, what matters is what it connects us to the past and prepare us for the future. Let us carry forward the energy of this morning into the work ahead, building the relationships and the proposals that will make a real difference. Thank you again for your presence, your commitment, and your trust. I wish you all a productive workshop and many fruitful conversations in the day ahead. Thank you very much. Christina, can take a picture?